What exactly happens when a pope dies? Listen carefully. The death of the Bishop of Rome, Pope, is marked by a series and sequence of rites and rituals that have been observed since the early centuries of Christianity. When the Pope dies, the Camerlengo is notified and immediately he assumes the position of the Supreme Pontiff until the cardinals gather in Rome to elect a new Pope. The body of the dead Pope has to be buried between the 4th and 6th day of his death. The official mourning period is 9 days in which different cardinals preside over the celebration of Requiem Holy Mass. Traditionally the head of the late pope would be hit with a hammer as his baptismal name is called out, once his physician has confirmed the time of his death. If the pope did not respond, then he would be confirmed dead to the entire world. The papal ring, fisherman's ring, is removed and crushed to mark the end of the pope's reign. This is also done to avoid forgery of documents in the pope's name. The papal apartment is completely sealed with wax to avoid looting of papal documents after his death. The pope is then clothed in red vestments, as red is the customary color of mourning popes. The pope's body is placed in 3 coffins. The first one is made of cypress, and this signifies that he was an ordinary man just like any other person. The next coffin is made of zinc. Traditionally lead would be used, which signifies durability, and on it a crucifix is placed. The Pope's name and reign of papacy is inscribed on it. Finally, both coffins are placed in the third one made out of walnut. Traditionally elm was used, but due to its scarcity around Rome, it's hardly longer used. This shows the dignity of the office of the Pope. The final, third coffin is hammered with pure gold nails. The Pope is buried in St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. The people can see the tomb of the Pope at the Basilica, where many popes have been buried since the early centuries of Christianity. Traditionally, some organs of the popes could be taken for burial and sent as relics in other places. However, Pope Pius X abolished this customary practice in the early 1900s. As a result of this, when Pope John Paul II died in 2005, the Vatican averts that his heart would not be sent to his native home Poland, as a relic according to the request of his hometown people. Since the photos were released some few days ago showing the dead body of late Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI, there has been some series of questions about the vestments he is shown in and whether it reflects some symbolic choice particular to him. In point of fact, this particular design schema, that is a red Gothic chasuble with a broad gold orphrey, simply aligns to recent papal burial custom. Every pope since the time of Paul VI has been so vested. See images, and popes are traditionally buried in red. The mitre worn to late Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI here is simple papal penitential mitre, white, cloth of silver and gold trimmed, likewise aligns to more general custom that has been used for the past number of popes. The cloth of gold mitre being the other tradition. Some have inquired about the absence of pallium on late Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI. The pallium is a sign of jurisdiction, and the traditional rule in this regard is that if a prelate who had that privilege is being laid out in a place where he does not have jurisdiction, such as in this instance since Benedict XVI no longer had that jurisdiction with his abdication, retirement, the pallium is placed beneath his head rather than worn around his shoulder. Once a pope passes away, a doctor confirms the death in the presence of the Cardinal Chamberlain and the Vatican's Director of Health Services. To mark the Pope's death, the bells of St. Peter's Basilica toll. Then, throughout the city of Rome, churches join in spreading the news throughout the Eternal City, and to the entire world. Tradition holds that the Cardinal Vicar of Rome makes the official announcement to the public. Usually a period of 9 days is declared for official mourning, which also gives time for pilgrims, cardinals, and heads of state to travel to Rome. The body of the deceased pope is then placed in the Apostolic Palace for members of the Curia to pay their respects, and then it is moved to St. Peter's Basilica to allow pilgrims to pay their last respects. But, with the death of the Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI, typical Vatican protocol is likely to differ. As he was the Bishop of Rome for 8 years, Pope Francis may ask for the Pope Emeritus funeral to be conducted like that of a reigning pope. This would mean a Vatican state funeral held in St. Peter's Square. Normally, a cardinal would celebrate the funeral mass. For example, when Pope John Paul II died, Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, the future pope, was the celebrant. However, as there is a living pope, Pope Francis will most likely celebrate the Requiem Holy Mass for the Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI. It will be a state funeral as the Pope is the head of the Vatican State. So it's likely different heads of states and delegations from around the world may come to pay their respects. Once the funeral mass is over, the coffin is then taken into St. Peter's Basilica to be laid in its final resting place. There, pilgrims will be able to visit and pray at Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI's tomb. At the request of the Pope Emeritus, his coffin will be kept in the Vatican crypt. It will be placed in the same area in which St. John XXIII was buried for 38 years and St. John Paul II for 8 years, before the remains were transferred to the basilica above. Another major difference regarding Vatican protocol is that there will be no conclave after the funeral. Pope Francis will continue to serve as the successor of St. Peter and Vicar of Christ in the entire world.